Yep. Okay, sorry, just checking the mic levels, everybody. 1, 2, here we go. That sounds a bit better. Okay, pull that down. There we go. Hey everybody, and welcome to the podcast, the live stream, I should say. Welcome to Politics, Culture, and some other shit. On this Saturday, the 11th of June, in the year of our Lord 2022. So, yeah, it's been interesting. This week's been very interesting. The loyalists are ramping up the tension, you know, being the good citizens that they are. How adorable and cute they are. They're so sweet. What else has been going on in the world? There's been so much. We're so busy. The obvious, the war in Ukraine. Noticed this sliding down the rankings of media, the current media obsessions. So the other day, I noticed that someone had pointed out that it was just on a random day last week that it was like 5th or 6th in the running order on the news. And then on the Sky News websites and things like that. Yeah, because things are not going the way it was hoped or planned. Russia is not capitulating. The Ukrainian people continuing to pay the price in their life's blood. And the military-industrial complex is making out like a pig at a trough on the bonanza of up to date $55 billion worth of American taxpayers' money being funneled. It's basically a slush fund at this point to the military-industrial complex. Yeah, and I still can't. If you remember, if you go back, whenever this thing started, and I first sort of commented on the situation, I said, I can't believe European leaders are going for this, because if I can see that this is going to end up being worst for Europe, surely these leaders must see cutting off Russian gas supplies. You know, what the fuck? Don't get me wrong, if you want to cut off Russian gas supplies, by all means go for it. But have in place an alternative to replace what you're losing out on, what you've decided not to take. I've no if people don't want to buy Russian gas, if Germany doesn't want to buy Russian gas and oil, or I don't know, it's up to you. I suppose it's your choice, but you don't just two fingers up to Russia, say go fuck yourself, and then act surprised whenever your economy goes into fucking free fall. It's just it's so stupid, and it kind of made me realize that our leaders aren't just all that. Sure, we know that anyway. I did think up until now, as a lot of people had said, not just me, and said a lot more eloquently than me, that Brexit was the biggest act of national self-harm committed to a nation committed upon itself. I will qualify that. I do genuinely think that this proxy war, using the life's blood of the Ukrainian people, that NATO, at the behest of the US, are advancing and committing against Russia, and the European leadership going along with it, is far worse. I think it's insanity. There's one thing writing 350 million a week on the side of a bus in order to lie to people to get them to vote for something that's going to benefit you personally, and threatening nuclear war. Those two things are not the same. So yeah, so there you go. Well done, European Union. Absolutely fucking fantastic. Great job. Well done. So, what else? So, we update. What have been up to? Went up to Donegal last week. Sorry, just give me a second. I'm going to change these headphones over. Went up to Donegal last week with my beautiful Janie, my daughter Lily, my other daughter Summer. She couldn't make it. And the McGeeses, my friends Richie and Lisa, and Mary Therese and Phil. Now, as you know, if you follow me, and you should follow me on Patreon, I should mention that. Follow me, like, share, subscribe, everybody, please. That would be fucking great. I'm just going to swap. I'm in the process of swapping these headphones over. The last podcast that I did, which you can get on Patreon, which will be available on your podcast app tonight, because I don't think I put that up. So, oh, that's better. Oh yeah, that's much better. Studio problems. So it'll be available. So you know Phil from Joyrider, from the rock band from back in the 90s. So Phil's my mate, Phil Woolsey, and they came up with us to Donegal for a few days. And while we were up there, I decided I may as well, record a few podcasts. So if you want to have a listen to that, head over to my Patreon. I'll stick the link in the thing. I've just realised that I didn't put it on in the. Actually, I'll do it after. And you can listen to that now. And then I'm going to be up while I was up there again. Richie McGee, my buddy, he is a football coach here in Lurgan, and he's so much more than that. He's got his own podcast as well. He's a great guy, a great sort of stalwart of the community. If you know, he's a real community guy. He's fucking brilliant. So I interviewed him as well. We had a conversation. We had a few beers and a bit of a chat, and it was class. But I must say, the highlight of the weekend for me was I got into an argument. Well, not an argument, but it was, let's say, it was getting heated. I actually left because it was getting a wee bit heated. And we'd been there, I had to leave anyway. I didn't check out. I just couldn't be bothered. Got into a bit of a discussion with an American fellow in Farron's Bar in Mallinhead, and it was great. And this guy obviously isn't reading the same, or watching the same media as me. I'm saying this guy is just your bog standard CNN listening, Washington Post reading sort of Democrat. And when I was sort of dropping a few truth bombs on him about the Russian economy doing very well and all that sort of stuff, he was Googling it, and it wasn't. And he was showing me, he was trying to prove me wrong by showing me that the Russian ruble on the Bloomberg exchange was sitting at 0.1 cent. And I pointed out that, well, that's because you're not allowed to trade the Russian ruble on the West. But if you look at other media or other sources of information, you will have a very different opinion on the subject. And we sort of disagreed about most things, but he was a very learned fellow. But he's an older guy. Yeah, he was indicative of how do I put this? He was sort of indicative of a groupthink that has been played out on all of us, not just him, for decades now. And he's an illustration of the complete capture of the public discourse. That easily provable untruths are considered to be mainstream knowledge. I hate even using words like that because when I hear people say mainstream, I always think of Sarah Palin, and I don't want to. But if someone's right, they're right, and you have to give them their credit. And well, not give them credit, just acknowledge that they were right. But yeah. So, but anyway, I digress. That was fun. I enjoyed that. That was my favourite bit of the weekend. So, as I said, if you fancy having to listen to Phil talk about the time the British English police or bomb disposal police blew up Joyrider's tour van, yeah, he tells that story and it's fucking hilarious. You should go and have a listen. So go over to my Patreon and you can check that out. It's on there. It will be going up on your podcast app pretty soon, but I know you're a decent spud and you really want to help me, so you should do that. Yeah. Okay. To the fucking show. Let's get this done. Oh, and I should tell you just before we get into this, I bought myself a new computer for the studio. More for recording, but I can obviously do podcasts on it too. And I got a Mac, and I went from PC to Mac, and it hasn't been just as smooth as I was promised. There's loads of apps that you get used to, and programs and little things that they don't fucking work on Macs. They don't have a version of them, and so I'm finding that especially here with my OBS, which is the software that I use to do these live streams. So see the little spectralizer on screen, that little voice thing reacting to my voice, that's called a spectralizer. And the reason that I want that is so that you know that I'm live and talking, that there's something moving on the screen, because I don't want to put a camera up like I did in the past because it's too stressful. And so I can't get that to work on my Mac. It's fucking annoying as fuck. So I'm sitting here with my laptop sitting beside my beautiful big 27-inch studio computer. That is far too much computer for me. I don't need it, but I got it anyway. So there we go. So let's do this. Okay. So we're gonna do a few shorties first. Just a few wee sort of things that aren't really big stories. They're just things that I have tickled me during the week. Some of them are good, some of them are bad. Here's one for you. Found this little video of Frank Zappa, a very, very wise man, and he's talking about the state of education in the 70s. Check it out.
Schools train people to be ignorant with style. They give you the equipment that you need to be a functional ignoramus. American schools do not equip you to deal with things like logic. They don't give you the criteria by which to judge between good and bad in any medium or format. And they prepare you to be a usable victim for a military-industrial complex that needs manpower. As long as you're just smart enough to do a job and just dumb enough to swallow what they feed you, you're going to be all right. But if you go beyond that, you're going to have these grave doubts that give you stomach problems, headaches, make you want to go out and do something else. So I believe that schools mechanically and very specifically try and breed out any hint of creative thought in the kids that are coming up.
So what's the alternative for the parent who would agree with you?
Well, remember that the school isn't the only place that a child gets educated. If you realize that the schools are doing damage, and I believe this, I believe that schools do a lot of damage to kids, then you should do what you can at home to help give them something to counteract what's happening to them at school.
You mean encourage creativity?
Encourage them to read things other than what the school gives them. Encourage them to watch things on television other than cartoons, because I don't believe that television is all bad, and some things that are on are very useful. And give them some support. Let them feel that you as a parent want them to be smart, not just to be successful, not just to be a nice little person, that you want them to develop their thinking apparatus.
There we go. What do you think of that? So Frank Zappa, very cool fella. And I agree with him completely. Obviously, and I think most of us do. Now, this isn't having to go at schools. It isn't having to go at teachers. We all know. We've all been through the mill. We know what the problems are. We know what the feelings are. I think I was failed by school, but I don't think I was encouraged at school. I don't think I did. I don't think I'm not a very good student. I know that anyway. I'm not a good student now. And I certainly wasn't back then. But that said, one of the things that always bewilders me about school, and you go through how many years of education and you don't know how to work out. You don't know what the compound interest rate on a loan is. You don't know how to work out a mortgage. You don't know these things. You're not taught these things. You are taught other things, algebra, things that you're never going to have to use for most of us. And you're considered a failure if you don't pass your maths at GCSE. And that doesn't make any fucking sense to me. I'm sure it doesn't to you either. It's, time should be put aside. Surely, for the practical things in life. This is what interest on money is. These are your rights when you go to work. We know why we're not taught these things. It's not a conspiracy theory. We know why we're not taught these things. The people that set the curriculum are the establishment. The establishment's not going to educate people against itself. It's like we were saying about that, the issue about the statues. When the statues were coming down, I was talking with Aidan Hart a couple of weeks back, the sculptor. Through the Edward Colston statue into the drink in Bristol, and the commentariat were saying, we should educate people rather than throw the statue out. And the establishment themselves, in defence, or not in defence of the people that were throwing the statue, in defence of the statue being there in the first place, we're saying the same thing. No, we need to educate. But the establishment will not educate against itself. That stands to reason. That's common sense, isn't it? That's logical, to use a word that Mr. Zappa just used a moment ago. The establishment is not going to educate the people against itself. Of course it's not. That's why the statue ended up in the water. People were trying to get a plaque put on that statue since the 1960s and they couldn't do it. So, there should be a place in public education. There should be a place in public education for the practical things in life, especially financial things. How do political parties work? What is it? What is the left? What is the right? You're opening up a whole fucking can of worms right there, because it depends on who's telling you, isn't it? So yeah, I'm not saying it's going to be easy. I just think that there should be practical things. I mean, I've been a socialist my entire life without knowing I was a socialist until quite late in life. Well, not quite late in life, but I certainly wasn't a teenager when I went, I'm a socialist. You know what I mean? But I was naturally, instinctively, that's what I was. I could tell you a few stories, but anyway, I'll move on. So on to the next thing. Wee bit of theme tuney poos. Check it out. Oh yeah. So here we go. We got some comments on the YouTube's Demo. By the way, Demo, thank you for those articles you sent me. They were fucking fantastic. So Demo sent me some stuff for the main topic tonight about the GAA and the orange. So yeah, I'm going to be reading those, brother. Thank you. Demo says here, I dropped a tweet off to... Oh, this is about the podcast with Phil from Joyrider. Phil Woolsey. I dropped a tweet to Phil that I enjoyed your Joyrider pod chat. He said Lurgan bands were always cooler than Portadown bands, by the way, Andy. He has said that. He said that to me in the past as well. I'm not going to disagree. Lurgan has a fucking fantastic output of musicians. I was just talking to somebody else about this yesterday, or last night, funnily enough. Hashtag the pigs weren't supposed to blow the bloody doors off. Very good. Thomas Clark, that story on Joyrider's van I'd fantastically elaborated on as being used for a bomb on tour somewhere east. Story about that story slightly out there and exaggerated my part. It's over the years my part. Very good. Very good. Very good. Thomas Clark, loved the Zappa interviews. I was kicked out of school before I even got to do GCSEs. Really? Took years to compensate to be considered employable. Wow, that's interesting. I didn't know it was likely illegal to leave a child without even doing GCSEs. Well, yeah, that's what I would have thought too. That's nuts, Thomas. Wow, not mad. Kicked out of school before GCSE. You must have been a real dick. No, you're not. No, you're not. Lovely fella, I'm sure. But yeah, your point is well made. Took years to compensate to be considered employable. Wow. Funnily, my daughters, both of them failed their GCSE maths and then had to go on and do it again, repeat it. And the amount of sort of doors, even at 16, that were closed to them because of that. Like, you know, colleges and universities and whatever, school, secondary, the next tier of education, just wouldn't even talk to them. It was just not happening. It's insane. But there you go. So I wanted to, we'll move on to the next wee thing. We quickies. Now I find this video, it's just the Christian right-wing preacher, and really hear this. Check this guy out.
What does God say is the answer, is the solution for the homosexual in 2022, here in the New Testament, here in the book of Romans, that they are worthy of death? These people should be put to death. Every single homosexual in our country should be charged with the crime, the abomination of homosexuality that they have. They should be convicted in a lawful trial. They should be sentenced with death. They should be lined up against the wall and shot in the back of the head. That's what God teaches. That's what the Bible says. You don't like it, you don't like God's word, because that is what God says.
Well, wow. What about that? Now, if that's not hate speech, I don't know what is. People are getting kicked off fucking Twitter because they're pointing the finger at Israel for shooting journalists in the back of the head. But this is okay, because this is where I got this. I got this on Twitter. Now, that there's a thing that they do, and you must, the reason that this is, I mean, I'm sure you've seen stuff like this before. I know I've seen plenty of it. But the thing that they all do the same thing, and it's the way they structure their sentence. And it's not an accident. What they say, it's the way they say it. Yeah. And they say, it's not me saying this, it's God saying this. So he said it there towards at the end. So I'll just play it for you again. Do you check it out? Not the whole thing. It's hard to stomach.
Is the solution for the homosexual in 2022, here in the New Testament, here in the book of Romans, that they are worthy of death. These people should be put to death. Every single homosexual in our country should be charged with the crime, the abomination of homosexuality that they have. They should be convicted in a lawful trial. They should be sentenced with death.
They should be convicted in a lawful trial. Should be charged, brought to court and found guilty lawfully.
Should be lined up against the wall and shot in the back of the head. That's what God teaches.
That's what God teaches.
That's what the Bible says.
That's it. So
you don't like it?
The West, that's how they get around it. So they all say this stuff, and it's just not me saying this. I don't care. It's not me saying this. It's God saying this. This is what God says. It's not me. And then in a court of law, that's legit. He said, I didn't say it. I didn't say anything. It's God. That's what, there's an interpretation in the Bible. That's what God says. By the way, for the record, Jesus didn't say a fucking word about homosexuality. Anything that God says is all that these guys pull from the Bible about homosexuality is all from the Old Testament. Yeah. So I thought, they call themselves Christians. So they're not supposed to take the word of Jesus, the Christ? Is that not a thing? No? Okay. What the fuck do I know? These guys as well, this sort of right-wing American Christian fundamentalism, this what do they call it? What's it called? It's you basically pray for money. You buy seed cloths, you have seed money, and then God returns. And as Chris, I always like to quote Chris Hedges. He says, you don't have to go to divinity school as I did to know that God didn't send his only son to earth and have him crucified in order to make you rich. But that's what the whole American right-wing evangelical thing is about. and it's more about making money than it is about being nice to people. And you know, I personally don't care. You know, people can have their own faith, and fair play to them if they have their own faith. That's if you have a faith, that's good. I like that. If it brings you peace and joy and whatever. But if it is dependent on this sort of hate, well then, no, fuck off. I will go against you every step of the fucking way. Yeah, absolutely horrible. And there's far too much of that. And this is my point. Also, these guys are very much connected to like the CLIP Foundation over here. They're one of them big super churches, big mega church complex things. They've built them outside. There's a couple outside Ballymena now, and I passed one the other day. I can't remember where it was. Not far from here actually, but yeah, awful. So they're sort of connected to these guys, and a lot of the money and the ideology comes from them. So you're talking, you know, your free peas and your Elams and all that stuff. Yeah. So back to the YouTube. There's a few people on the YouTube here joining me. By the way, yes, you know that. So you're going to be listening to this in podcast form. Those of you that aren't going to be joining me live tonight. But whenever I do these, and I used to do them sort of regularly, you know, like every Wednesday night when I could. Regularly when I could. But I just sort of when I get a chance to do them these days, that's when I do them. I try to do one or two a week. Sort of getting there. I'm getting there. Yeah, so back onto the YouTube. Thomas Clark says, lyrics to In the Flesh, Pink Floyd. Are there any queers in the theatre tonight? Get them up against the wall. Wow. The lyrics to In the Flesh, Pink Floyd. Are there any? Is that right? Is it were they was that meant as a homophobic? That wasn't a homophobic thing, right, Thomas? Floyd were kind of cool, all right? No, I've got that wrong. Oh, please don't tell me Pink Floyd are bastards. Thomas Clark, if I had my way, I'd have you all shot. I'm with you. Demo, your preacher dude sounds a bit like a local preacher who was calling nationalist rats this week in God's name. Of course, exactly. Thomas Clark. God's some backup, and that's the point. That's what they do. You notice it all the time. They all say, it's not me saying this. It's God says this. God is against us. And you're a sinner and you're going to go to hell for not agreeing with me. So, yeah. So, that's awful stuff, isn't it? Really bad. So, next, we'll move on to the next little shorty. So, I found this. This is cool. There's a journalist, I'm sure you know who she is, called Abby Martin, and she's rather good, anti-imperialist. I can't remember the organisation that she ran, but it got hounded out of existence. It got silenced, and she was on RT for a bit and all the rest of it. She's a real feisty one, man. She's a fighter. I wouldn't like to fall out with her, but she cornered. I was actually surprised she got into the room, but have a check. So she corners Anthony Blinken, who is the American, what is he, the Secretary of State, is he now? I don't know, Minister for Cheeseburgers. So she cornered him at a presser, and who do you see this? Check this out, this is fucking class.
Secretary Blinken, what about Shireen Abu Akleh? She was murdered by Israeli forces. Right, CNN just agreed to this. These are your two greatest allies in the Middle East, Saudi Arabia and Israel. They have murdered American journalists, and there have been absolutely no repercussions. And you're sitting up here talking about the freedom of press and democracy. The United States is denying sovereignty to tens of millions of people around the world with draconian sanctions for electing leaders that you do not like. Why is there no accountability for Israel or Saudi Arabia for murdering journalists? It is one of the most dangerous places in the world to be a journalist in Palestine.
I deplore the loss of Shireen. She was a remarkable journalist, an American citizen, as you all know. And there too, we are determined to follow the facts and get to the truth of what happened.
Secretary Blinken, with all due respect.
I'm sorry, with respect, they have not yet been established.
Yes,
they
has.
No, they have not. We are looking for an independent, credible investigation. When that investigation happens, we will follow the facts wherever they lead. It's as straightforward as that. That has not yet happened, but it's something that we very much want to see happen.
And we'll have time after
Thank
the
you.
panel, of course, to talk more about this.
She's good. I was actually amazed she got that length of time. I was amazed she got into the fucking room, because they know she's well known, and they do tend to isolate themselves so they don't have to go through these things, these uncomfortable scenarios. But then, he was well prepared. He did have an answer for her, which was complete bullshit. But because they won't do anything, that's the fucking point. They're not going to go against Israel. They're not going to go against Saudi Arabia. They can't. We'll talk about that a bit more. In the little, we're going to talk about the summit of the Americas later on, and fuck me, we're very soon actually. It's going to be it's going to be next, after the next couple of shorties. So fair play to Abby Martin for cornering that ghoul, and she makes a fair point. That journalist, I can't remember her name. Oh Christ, God forgive me. She was shot point blank. It has been proven. There's no ambiguity about who did it, what happened, etc., etc. It's clear. It's there. It's done. And yeah, let me just. So when he says, we'll follow the investigation, no, they won't. And this also comes now. So she's been killed. The American journalist was killed by the Saudis in the Turkish embassy. Again, his name escapes me unforgivably. Yeah, if you know me, I'll not be surprised. You can barely remember my own fucking name. Yeah, so nothing is. I mean, obviously the US isn't going to do anything to Israel and the Saudis, because they're not well. I think they technically would be defined as a client state, but I do wonder who is the tail wagging the dog, especially when it comes to Israel. Yeah. So that's shocking stuff. There you go. Fair play to Abby Martin, though. That's brilliant. A couple of mentions on the YouTube. Demo. Totally recommend Chevy Chase movie Fletch Lives for a piss take of the US evangelical preacher scene. Absolutely. Yeah. I have seen it. I can remember it, but I'm definitely going to watch it again now. This because I fucking hate these guys. I could do a weekly podcast just on those guys. And have you seen the what's the TV show? Let me have a quick Google. We'll have a quick Google. I've got a recommendation for you. Danny McBride is in it. It's about the evangelicals. Oh shit. Let me sorry. Give me 1 second. Where's his IMDb? Oh, The Righteous Gemstones. That's it. So I'll just throw the link into the chat for you. So, where is it? There we go. Right. Got it. And I'm making mistakes because I'm literally using two fucking computers at the same time, and I am not that good. Check. No, that's not it. See? That's exactly what I'm talking about. Sorry, stay with me. IMDb. Where's the IMDb? Oh, for fuck's sake, where did it go? Righteous Gemstones. There it is. Right. Yeah. So it's a piss take. And if you wanted to do a wee bit of more digging on this one, this show is absolutely fucking brilliant. I put it into the chat, so check it out, The Righteous Gemstones. But there's also a great podcast by the Chapo Trap House, and they talk about the Righteous Gemstones, but they draw. It's great. They tell you who these characters are supposed to be, about these famous evangelicals. I mean, these people are fucking. They're worth hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. So they explain that there was an incident happened whenever, some preacher and his wife got caught in a three-way with the fucking pool boy, and that sort of gets put into the Righteous Gemstones, these real things. So you should check that out. Absolutely brilliant. They're making a new series right now, and it's got who else is in it? Oh, John Goodman. Yeah, John Goodman plays the sort of father. It's absolutely fucking hilarious. It's brilliant. If you like Danny McBride and his stuff, which I do. So there you go. So Thomas Clark on the YouTube. Regards to my Pink Floyd query, Andy, Roger Waters was playing the part of a Nazi type party leader with a megaphone. Yeah, sorry, dude. I remember now. Yeah. With a megaphone declaring all who should be put up against the wall. Yeah. I got you. Sorry for being thick. Demo. Pious preachers gave me the absolute heebie-jeebies after the creepy preacher dude in the Poltergeist movie who sang, God is in his holy temple. Ugh. Yeah, I know. I hear you. So yeah. So here, and I found this little one. So we're going to, the next little sort of shorty. Listen, I tell you, the podcast is fucking rammed tonight. This is, when I was researching the GAA stuff, just in particular in the Orange Order, I got so much to read to you. So check this out real quick. CEO compensation packages. This is a tweet from Public Citizen, which is an American organization. CEO compensation packages last year. The Amazon CEO, how much do you think he got? $212,700,000. That was his salary, his wages. Nike, $32,900,000. Chipotle, don't know what that is. I think it's a restaurant. $17,800,000. GameStop, again, don't know what that is, but I'm going to assume it's something to do with games. $16,800,000. Now, compare that to the workers' salaries. The Amazon salary, the average worker's salary, $32,855. The CEO, $212 million. Amazon or Nike, $36,000. Chipotle, $15,000. GameStop, $12,000. Holy fuck. That's penny. You can't live on that. You can't live on any of those. Says corporate greed is suffocating the working classes. Que sera, and ever thus the deadbeats, and that's just the way it is. That's the way it is all over the world, and we know this. And the exam. So if you say to me, well, the CEO works harder than some dude working in a warehouse. First of all, does he? But let's. I'll concede your point. Let me concede your point, just for the sake of getting this ball over the line. Does he work? All right, wait, I'm going to do a quick. I have a calculator in my hand. So you say, well, he works harder. You say, well, okay, well, let's see how much harder it is. So we'll do 212,700,000 divided by what was it? The average Amazon 32,855 equals 6,473.9 times more pay. Now, what did they say? 4,000. Jesus, my memory. 6,473 times. Right. So are you saying to me that the Amazon CEO works 6,473 times harder than his employees? You're not. No one's going to concede that point. Surely. No, or no one's going to argue that point. Pardon me. I mean, that's insanity. That's insanity. So, this is again another illustration of a classic Marxist argument. This is exactly the sort of stuff that Marx explained better than anyone has so far, and is as true today, clearly, as it was 100 and whatever years ago when the great man wrote it. That's shocking, isn't it? So there you go. Unbelievable. I am absolutely stunned by that as well. GameStop, $12,000. I can't. How can anyone live on $12,000? That's about 10 grand a year. Unbelievable. So, I think that's it. I think that's all the shorties done. Yeah. I don't know if I'm going to get time to get... I wanted to talk about Paul Mason as well. So, we're going to do... Well, okay, we'll call this one a shorty as well, because it kind of it is. And, it's about Joe Biden. And a thing called the Summit of the Americas. Now, let me just get it up on the screen. There we go. So, the Summit of the Americas. Do you know what the Summit of the Americas is? No. Well, let me tell you. So, the Summit of the Americas is something that the Biden administration has organised. Yeah, it's well. They say it's in to have a summit. As you do, as you have a summit. You know what a summit is, right? So they're going to have a summit, but no. There's an organisation that it's a CAA cutout. That means it's funded by the CAA in order to peddle influence in Latin America. And where it doesn't, we can't peddle the influence. We can't it doesn't soft power. America doesn't do soft power, but where they can't do it, they will organise coups and things like that. A coup is not a Scottish cow. It is short for a coup d'etat, and that's a French word for we're going to kill your president. And so the OAS, Organization of American States. So let me read this to you. This is from an organization. This is actually a Twitter thread by an organization called VenezuelaAnalysis.com. So, the Summit of the Americas has been a PR disaster for the Biden administration. So to the rescue comes the corporate media, with all the bias and dishonesty that can be mustered. Let's look at some of the highlights. So this is, what it says, highlights from the media's portrayal of the Summit of the Americas. Look at this glorious sentence. And this is from Reuters. So this is a quote from Reuters. Hosting the Summit of the Americas in Los Angeles, Biden sought to assure the assembled leaders about his administration's commitment to the region, despite nagging concerns that Washington, at times, is still trying to dictate to its poorer southern neighbours. Holy shit. Look at this glorious sentence, says the author of Venezuela Analysis. So, US meddling everywhere in the hemisphere is not a fact based on actual policies, but a nagging concern some people have. Also, someone give a trophy to the writer-editor who introduced "at times" in his sentence. So, the writer has implied that there are nagging concerns that Washington at times is trying to dictate to its... And the tweeter points out this is written policy. It's not an imagined boogeyman. So we move on. The above quote is from this Reuters piece. Biden's plan to pitch Latin America reboot at the summit dogged by disputes. So there are other comedy moments sprinkled in, such as the summit was conceived as a platform to showcase US leadership in reviving Latin American economies. Some reporters still believe in Santa. So he said that the US is organising this summit in order to revive Latin American economies. And this goes back to our point, when we say imperialists don't go to your country because your country's poor. They will make your country poor eventually, but that's not why they first went there. It was because of the very opposite. So, right, and the tweeter goes on. Right, so regional leaders, so here's one here. Biden's national security advisor, Jake Sullivan, told reporters the choice by some leaders not to attend reflected their own idiosyncratic decisions and that substantive work would still be accomplished. So a few countries didn't attend, Latin American countries didn't attend. The tweeter says, so regional leaders boycotting the summit is idiosyncratic, in brackets. But Washington deciding which countries are democratic is not under question. Must be a God-given right. So Washington didn't invite Cuba. This is what the author is getting at. So next up is CNN, which quotes Biden saying that democracy has been a hallmark of our region. Any half-honest journalist would have added the myriad of anti-democratic coups promoted by the US as context. Maybe that's too much to ask from loyal stenographers. And this is, you could say this about any part of the world. Literally any part of the world. The author goes on. Now, this one is fucking very good. So this is from I think it's from the same CNN article. It wasn't only the region's dictators who were denied invites to this week's summit. The opposition leader of Venezuela, Juan Guaido, was also left off the list, even though the United States recognizes him as the interim president. Extending an invitation to Guaido could have further aggravated tensions with countries who still recognize the dictator Nicolas Maduro, who was among the autocrats Biden barred from participating. There's so fucking much wrong with that sentence. It's unbelievable. First of all, well, I'll read the response from Venezuela Analysis. It's amazing just how casually these assertions are written. Oh, yes. Surely if the almighty White House doesn't invite them, they must be dictators. At least they are no longer pretending there's any legitimacy about self-proclaimed Juan Guaido besides being recognized by the US. It is staggering. Juan Guaido, the interim president, when Juan Guaido declared himself the president of Venezuela, most people in Venezuela hadn't a fucking clue who he was. He is obviously a US stooge, a child of the Chicago boys. You know who the Chicago boys are? The hard right neo-lib economists that came out of the Chicago. It's called the Chicago boys because they were based in a university in Chicago. Yeah. So extending an invitation to Guaido could have further aggravated tensions with countries who still recognize the dictator Nicolas Maduro. Nicolas Maduro is the elected president in a free and fair election. Actually, twice. Or maybe 3 times now. And the elections they were solid. They were observed by the UN. Jimmy Carter went down there and observed them at the time and said they were an example of how I mean, for America to be... Donald Trump is still dragging fucking states and counties around the courts in America claiming that Biden stole the election off of him. Still now, 2 years later. And by the way, the reason, this is another lie, the reason that Juan Guaido wasn't elected, wasn't invited, is because Joe Biden and the Americans are basically courting Nicolas Maduro and his administration in order to get them to turn the taps on for the oil that the rest of the world has lost because of these ridiculous sanctions against Russia. The Americans need this oil too. American oil is gas is going through the roof, and America is a car-based society. So where it affects us here, it affects Americans, the average American, much, much worse. So that thread, the dude goes on about Juan Guaido, and rightly so, is absolutely, the Juan Guaido thing is stunning. So let me see. Finally, a piece on Guaido from his ever-reliable friends at the AP, the Associated Press. The headline has him as a pro-democracy leader. He's not much of a leader because very few people follow him, and pro-democracy, in quotes, is questionable considering he's been pushing a coup for 3 years. So that goes on. It's absolutely breathtaking. There's a quick article here. I'll blast through it, which will explain all this. Just tighten it up for you in your head that you can get your gums around it. Al Jazeera, a summit of the Americas, a squandered opportunity at a critical time, a fiasco, a flop, a disappointment. These are just some of the ways that political analysts and Latin American and Caribbean leaders are describing the summit of the Americas, which is being hosted by US President Joe Biden in Los Angeles. Even before the summit began this week, the main subject of the conversation was not how regional leaders would tackle key common challenges such as migration, climate change, economic disparity and cooperation, nor was it about how the United States would take advantage of a unique opportunity to put its relationship with Latin America back on track after 4 years of neglect under former President Donald Trump. Well, I would question the framing of that paragraph, but we shall push on regardless. Instead, even before it began, what fractured the only venue in which the heads of all the countries in the Americas can sit down face to face was Biden's decision to exclude the presidents of 3 nations, Nicaragua, Cuba and Venezuela. It's not an issue of support for those countries' respective leaders, Daniel Ortega, Miguel Diaz-Canel and Nicolas Maduro. Most countries in the region consider them authoritarian and undemocratic, as does Washington. Again, I would question that summation. Most countries in the region consider them authoritarian. Well, that's you need to provide evidence to say things like that, I'm afraid, and the author doesn't. But by unilaterally excluding 3 nations that are part of the Americas, arguing that they do not meet the necessary democratic requirements, the White House has turned the clock back to pre-Obama era. It was a mistake, and we will say so at the summit, said Chile's President Gabriel Boric as he arrived in Los Angeles. No one can save him or herself alone. We have to join forces to achieve a better development. We have the right to say that exclusion, if not the way, is not the way. Historically, it has never achieved results, and when the United States attempts to exclude certain countries, ultimately it only serves to reinforce their leaders' actions at home. Mexico's President Andrés Manuel López Obrador had warned Biden that he would boycott the summit if he excluded 3 countries. Now, Obrador is the new president of Mexico, and he's a leftist. I think he nationalized something last week. It was the production of what do you call that shit that goes into the batteries? Not the zinc. That Bolivia has loads of lithium. Nationalised lithium production in Mexico, which is good. It probably means he's going to be assassinated soon. Prompting pleas from the White House, which sent former Democratic Senator Christopher Dodd to the region to try and contain the looming crisis. But the Mexican leader made good on his threat and stayed home. as have representatives of Honduras, Guatemala, El Salvador, Bolivia, and several Caribbean nations. Now, so let me, right. Just going to roll her back a wee bit here. Most countries in the region consider them to be authoritarian and undemocratic, as does Washington. That's what the author had written just 2 paragraphs earlier. Except for, clearly, Mexico, Honduras, Guatemala, El Salvador, Bolivia, and several Caribbean nations who didn't go. How can you be so fucking stupid? How can you write that and then write this? I mean, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Several Caribbean nations is several. So that's 4. That's 7. And then the 10 countries, or the 3 countries that weren't sent, that's another 3. That's 10. And then Mexico's 11. So it's 11 countries. That's quite a lot of countries. I'm going to Google it. I'm going to find out right now how many countries are in Latin America. Here we go. 33 countries. So a third of the countries in Latin America, in Latin America and the Caribbean, according to the United Nations, is 33. So a third of them didn't go. So I think that poo-poos the author's summation. So let's push on. Such a snub underscores just how much US influence has waned in its own region. Mexico's former minister, Marcelo Ebrard, who is attending the summit in his president's place, said the decision not to invite Cuba had set the summit back a decade. It is a serious error to freeze out countries. In a bid to ensure the leader of Latin America's largest democracy would also not stay at home, the White House cut a deal with Brazil's president, Jair Bolsonaro, a staunch ally of President Trump. Biden agreed to hold bilateral talks with his Brazilian counterpart, but according to the White House, he refused a request not to bring up the thorny issues such as the Amazon and Bolsonaro's attacks against the country's Supreme Court and electoral tribunal. Just before leaving for Los Angeles, Bolsonaro shot back, saying he was still not convinced that Biden has not stolen the 2020 election from President Trump. Well done. The summit also begs the question, how does Biden expect to manage an unprecedented migration crisis in the Americas when Venezuela, a country from which more than 6 million people have fled, is not a part of the conversation? Neither are Cuba and Nicaragua, home to tens of thousands of migrants who are mostly heading to the US. It all seems to go back to the question of priorities and the fact that for decades Latin America has not been near the top of the list for the US. Former Peruvian president. Okay. So I'm going to pull the plug on that. Yep. So there you go. Well done. That was supposed to be a shorty, but as you know, it kind of went a bit longy. So let's see what's happening over on the YouTube. So, with regards to, I think, the wage situation, Thomas Clark says, I wonder how the Great Resignation has made any difference. Kind of like an airstrike with a pea shooter, I bet, in their eyes. Yeah. Demo says, no wonder Amazon were opposing their workers unionising to protect the executives' sky-high pay. Their global corporate messaging must be like, the punishment beatings will continue until morale improves. That's brilliant. I love that one. That's a good one. The punishment beatings will continue until morale improves. No doubt. Demo. Juan Guaido. So he's a blow-in from the Windy City. Boom, boom. Very good. Oh, that's very witty. I like that. Biden should try unilateral talks. It's going great for the Tories. Aye, I know. It's going to work out, isn't it? Unilateral talks. Yeah. talking with yourself. So, okay, getting through this rightly. How long have I been going? An hour. I haven't even got to the main part of the fucking podcast yet. So, this is it. We're going to do the GAA versus the OO. Although, I'm not making that comparison because it's fucking complete bullshit. And this has, I saw this during the rounds during the week, and it was ahead of what turned out to be a rumour that turned out to be true, where the BBC decided not to resume, that they're not going to keep doing live coverage of the 12th. Now, it's, well, I'll read the article. Let me get it up here. The article. Cheeky. So, let me put the, where is it? There it is there. Slideshow going there. There's Mr. Cusack. Oh, and by the way, this ties in to the puka. Remember we were talking about the puka the other week with the Eden Hart? We get to go back there. We get to go back, not to the puka, but to the place. Wait till you hear. Stay with me. It's true. You've gone mad, Andy. No, it's true. Check it out. So, here we go. BBC Northern Ireland has confirmed it will not resume live coverage of the Belfast's 12th of July parade. In a letter to the Orange Order, it said the decision was taken after careful consideration. The station said the Belfast demonstration will still be covered, including an hour-long programme featuring events at 8 locations. The Orange Order parades were cancelled in 2020 due to the pandemic. Last year, the Loyal Order decided to hold scaled-down parades in local areas. In 2019, the live coverage duration was 1 hour 15 minutes and the highlights were 39 minutes. BBC representatives met senior Orangeman and ex-RUC thug, or was he UDR? Can't remember. Mervyn Gibson. And Democratic Unionist Party leader Sir Geoffrey Donaldson on Thursday and said it would share details of our plans with them. The meeting happened amid speculation that the BBC was going to stop its live coverage in a move criticised by Unionists. We think there is particular value in seeking to better, more fully reflect Orange Order events across the region that our highlights programme. That sentence doesn't make sense to me. Which has been popular with local audiences. Some of them, not all of them, is the best means of achieving this objective, said the BBC Northern Ireland Interim Director Adam Smith. The Belfast demonstration will, of course, be included within it, and this coverage will be complemented by reports on the BBC's news service across radio, television, and online. All right, and then it goes, what happens in the 12th? Yeah, we fucking know what happens in the 12th. In the Belfast Telegraph, TUV leader Jim Allister said he felt the plan was in line with the anti-unionist tendency that exists within the BBC Northern Ireland. Oh yes, because no unionists work in the BBC. A Democratic Unionist Party MP is to speak to the UK's Culture Secretary about the move. So, a Democratic Unionist Party MP, it's Ian Paisley, is going to be talking to the UK's Culture Secretary, Nadine Dorries. Nadine Dorries, do you honestly think that fucking Vicky Pollard's mum, Nadine Dorries, an English wine mum, knows anything about the Orange Order? She is a fucking halfwit. So I, for one, I'm not concerned at all that the Orange Order's parades are going to be back on the TV, because if the two fucking geniuses that are going to be dealing with it is Ian Paisley and Nadine Dorries, we're safe, lads, we're safe. Speaking before the change in coverage was confirmed, Ian Paisley said he was concerned it would be a washing out of the identity of Northern Ireland. Mr. Paisley told the BBC's Nolan show the annual event deserves live coverage rather than being downgraded and downplayed. It's because something that should be expanded on the BBC, because it's so part and parcel of the life of thousands of people in Northern Ireland. We saw recently with the Centenary Parade. Mr. Paisley said his concerns will be raised next week with Nadine Dorries, the Secretary of State for Digital Culture, Media and Sport, which, by the way, is just a fucking made-up job. It's not a thing that exists. She got that job because she's a fucking Boris Johnson loyalist, and whenever he goes, she'll be the first out the door with the next administration. She's just a hatchet woman for him, and a gob on a stick that's going to go and support him no matter what he does. She has no real power, no real authority. I think people have concerns that a programme that is edited, chopped and cut will not capture the wealth of the identity that exists in a live programme. It deserves live coverage. There are plenty of people who are unable to get access to these parades. Elderly people, disabled, people who have commitments at work and would like to see it live on their TV screens and dip in and out of it. I think that's probably the only true thing he said in that whole piece. Yeah, there probably are disabled people that can't get to it and elderly. So there you go. Yeah. Mad. So let's do this. So I'm going to read you a few articles, and so after that, then what came about, we started seeing a lot on Twitter and on social media. And I know these things aren't really the real world, but nonetheless, started seeing things like, about the GAA, right? So, and if it's good enough, the GAA, the Orange Order should, and all that sort of stuff, and that really fucking infuriated me. The comparison between the two is clearly, it's utter nonsense and laughable nonsense, and you really do need to have been living in a bucket by yourself to believe it. So I'm going to read you this article by Jude Collins. It's from his own blog, but it first appeared as a column in the Andersonstown News. So at times, the article is called Orange Order /GAA. Do they balance each other? So it's a question that needs to be asked, and it needs to be, if it's being asked, it needs answered. And, someone's asking it, so let's see what the answer is, according to Jude Collins. At times there's a strong temptation to put your head under the sofa and not remove it. You tell yourself that people are ultimately decent and simply want what is best for themselves and their family. Then you come on the banner hung at Grove playing fields, anti-British GAA not welcome, and reports that a group of men warned some young people wearing GAA football tops to leave, and you reach for a second cushion. This hostility to Gaelic games took a deadly turn in 1997. That's when Sean Brown, the chairman of Balahi GAA, was abducted and killed by a group of loyalists. What is it about GAA that many unionists feel outraged by its very existence? After all, it's just an organisation that supports games, isn't it? Well, maybe something more than that. Viewed historically, maybe some unionists would have grounds for unease. The GAA was founded in 1884. Rule 4 of its official guide declares, the association shall actively support Irish language, traditional Irish dancing, music, song and other aspects of Irish culture. It shall foster an awareness and a love of national ideals in the people of Ireland and assist in promoting a community spirit through its clubs. And by God, it has fucking done that in spades. When I was a teenager, I played, and that, by the way, that paragraph is basically the summation of everything that unionists hate and loyalists hate about the GAA. Because their stated aim is the promotion of all things Irish. And as we know, they don't want to fiend about the place. So, back to the article. When I was a teenager, I played Gaelic football and loved it. I never really thought of it as a distinctly Irish game, or that the GAA had an aim of fostering a love of all things Irish. We were just playing football, and I can concur with that. Exactly, my own relationship with the GAA as a young person. Unionist children are taught to shun all Gaelic games. Scarcely a single state school includes Gaelic games on the curriculum, which is a pity, because besides widening the pool from which the players for club and county could be drawn, it would foster closer relations. It's difficult to work together towards a common goal, no pun intended. and not develop a sense of comradeship with your fellow workers. But unionists refuse to join the GAA or support it in any way. They point out that the Irish national flag frequently flies before games, and that the Irish national anthem is frequently played before throw-in. You'll often hear unionists draw a comparison between GAA and the Orange Order. Arlene Foster did that just last week. No, not just last week. When was this column? So we get our dates right, so we don't put our foot in our mouths in any sort of way. Sorry, give me a sec. I just want to just check the date on this. June 27th, 2020. So Arlene Foster did that just last week when she suggested that schools might reopen and still maintain social distancing by using a local Orange Hall or GAA premises for overspill. There are several important differences between the two organisations, and here we go. Let's get to it. The first and most obvious one is the Gaelic games are played in a stadium. A march through the local town with a band playing doesn't precede Gaelic fixtures. Not through the local town, you do get bands sometimes though. The big games have a parade and a band, but it's all inside the stadium and they're all welcome. The Orange Hall is by definition a building of the Orange Order, and the Orange Order does not confine its activities to one venue. Each year it marches on the Queen's Highway somewhere between 2,000 and 4,000 times. Rule number 2 of the Orange Order's general rules declares no person who at any time has been a Roman Catholic can be admitted into the institution except by special application to the Grand Lodge or Grand Committee, accompanied by certificates and testimonials transmitted through the Grand Secretary of his county, which shall be so perfectly satisfactory as to produce a unanimous vote on the occasion. The Orange Order then is an organisation that seeks to screen and exclude any polluting outside elements. The GAA, in contrast, seeks to expand and develop, and has done so to an extraordinary degree with some 500,000 members throughout the world. The people who used their shaky markers to decorate the Grove Playing Fields banner were clearly apprehensive of the global expansion of the GAA. Perhaps that sad banner is unionism's tormented answer to Bobby Sands' famous assertion, "Our revenge will be the laughter of our children." So there you go. Now, and it almost goes without saying, there's no comparison between the two. The GAA and the Orange Order are not the same thing, but the comparison where it has any legitimacy is only based around the fact that they are major cultural institutions that have a certain influence on the communities that they come from. Okay? That makes sense, right? So, whilst the GAA continues to grow, the Orange Order is shrinking and going backwards and going backwards and backwards, and less people are joining us. And whereas the GAA is quite the opposite. With my own personal experience, within about 5 miles of my house, we've got 5. Let me think. There's Clonard, there's St. Peter's, Neve Patter, there's the Wolf Tones, there's Sarsfields, there's Aerogue, there's Clonagale. There's 6. That's within about 5 miles of my house. These are major institutions. I don't mean like a football pitch with a dugout at the side of it. I mean modern facilities, sports halls, gymnasiums, bars and restaurants, football pitches, handball alleys, and everything that goes with it. You got creches during the day, gymnasiums, classrooms teaching Irish language. These things are not, they're not to be laughed at. Oh, and Pierce Oaks is another one from around here. What else? The Sean Tracy's Hurling Club. They don't have a facility. They play out of one of the local parks, but the rest of them do. It's St. Paul's. Sorry, Damo. St. Paul's. Absolutely. St. Paul's. How could I forget St. Paul's? My own niece is a place for St. Paul's. 7 or 8 within a few miles of my house. It's amazing. It's fucking amazing. And they're growing exponentially. They offer so much more to the community. And the big thing about now, we all have our issues with anything. Nothing is perfect, right? So over the years, I might have called the GAA the Grab All Association, and they're fucking guilty of that from time. They have been guilty of that, in my opinion. But nonetheless, I don't think they should have sold rights to Sky. I don't like it when that happens, but nonetheless, it happened and whatever. But it ended up in a bit of an expansion of the sport. So you could argue the toss both ways. But that's not my point. My point, whenever the COVID thing happened, when COVID started, it wasn't the Irish government that led the shutdown. It was the GAA. They shut their facilities down and they advised them, right, this is what we're doing. Boom. And the Irish government followed the GAA then after that. And the GAA, through their connections with the communities from which they come, were able to instantaneously provide all the facilities and services that the local community needed, the elderly, the disabled, organising food parcels and organising community outreach, and anybody that needed help, they got it. I mean, anybody. Right? Now, that was the GAA did that. Here in my hometown of Lurgan, I know for a fact the rugby clubs, the cricket clubs, and the football clubs from, euphemistically is referred to, the other end of town, all took the lead from the GAA clubs. And that happened. How do I know that happened? Because Jacob Stockdale, the Irish Rugby International, spoke about it. How he was so impressed by the way the GAA was able to just spring into action straight away. They have a connectivity in the community. They're of the community in a way that the other sporting bodies aren't. They are true of the community, which brings you back to the initial statement by the founders of the GAA that they want to develop relationships within the community, which is exactly what the GAA did and do. Jacob Stockdale to further his point, he developed a relationship with Clonagale's and Armagh, former Armagh captain, Stephen Campbell. He developed a friendship with him, and now Stephen Campbell's son goes to Lurgan Rugby Club, and Stockdale's son goes to Clonagale GAA. And they made a bit of a TV show out of it, I think. And or a program, or maybe it was a feature on the news. I remember seeing it on the TV. But this is our community. This is our community. This is the way we are. This is the way it should be. But that's what the GAA did. They did that all over Ireland. So, you know, it's just fucking outrageous whenever you see the, you know, now, I'm not saying for a second that the Orange Order didn't do similar. I don't know, because I'm not in the Orange Order, so I don't know what the Orange Order did. But that's what the GAA did, and they were really, really fucking good at it. So I'm going to quick. I'll be reading for the rest of the fucking night. If I'm going to hit a couple of wee articles, comments on the YouTube. Thomas Clark, gub on a stick, love it, Andy. Yeah, you can thank my friend Sandy Fraser for that one. Demo says Mervyn Gibson outraged 12th of July live feed being dropped, compared it to the BBC coverage of GAA. When I checked the BBC Ulster foil today, there was blanket rugby coverage and no coverage of Antrim versus Cork. Well, exactly. I mean, it is laughable. Someone like yourself, Demo, is going to do the comparison. Someone's going to get the numbers and put them up, and we're all going to see that it's nonsense, but it's going to make absolutely no fucking difference, because these people just live staring at a wall. Demo, no admittance to an Orange Hall then, unless you can give the secret handshake to the Grand Master and not be a Catholic. demo reminds me of St. Paul's, absolutely. Thomas Clark. The power of perceptibly open minds dictating that it's in their benefit to include all interested in their culture with little stipulation. And what was the other one? Absolutely. Lurgan GAA clubs, demo again. Lurgan GAA clubs were supporting local pensioners, including my mum, with food parcels during the lockdowns. Absolutely they were. And that's the difference. So there's an article here by Declan Bogue about the birth of the GAA on the BBC. I'm not going to read it, because, let's say, I've got too much. I was a bit over enthusiastic when I was going through this. But I'll just give you the first little bit. The first paragraph, because it's interesting. To most, the light sunshine of May the 13th, 1990 in Castleblaney had little enough to distinguish itself from a lot of Ulster Championship openers. Monaghan served up Antrim a 3-17-0-8 tanking, and the summer was off to an underwhelming start. The intrigue, however, lay in the forensics. A crew of riggers disassembled a scaffolding tower. The cherry pickers behind either goal were lowered and brought away. Miles and miles of cable was being rolled back up, and the age of television had finally caught up with the Ulster Championships. For the first time, BBC Northern Ireland were filming an Ulster Championship match for the brand new Sunday night's highlights show, The Championship. It's still on. The idea came from Jim Neely, a former rugby prop forward with Estonians and Ulster Rugby. He had been appointed as head of sport for the network in February '89. At that point, the station's output was limited to around a dozen outside live broadcasts of rugby games, Northern Ireland internationals, and a smattering of Schools Cup. Nearly envisaged a different world. After all, if they were paying the outside broadcast crew on year-long contracts, why wouldn't they work all year round? There you go. And the title of the article is called Fenian Games, Letters from Sinn Féin and the Birth of the GAA on BBC Northern Ireland. I'll put the link in the show notes. It's very interesting. So, now, I'm going to finish this segment with a little bit about Michael Cusack, and then who founded GAA, and then the link between loyalism and the orange. So, this little article is from irishcentral.com. And I remember I was saying about how I'm going to bring it back to the puka. This is the link, because the puka of Enniscorthy, remember, is being put in place next on the 25th of July, 2 p.m. in the Michael Cusack Centre in County Clare. Right? So here we go. Michael Cusack was born in Carron, County Clare, September the 20th, 1847. Went on to found GAA. I met with Hugh McCann of the Department of External Affairs in 1960 when Ireland was preparing to join the EC, and I asked him whether it was the right thing to do. Now, this might go a wee little way to explaining the unionist hatred, well, some unionist hatred of the GAA. I asked him whether it was the right thing to do. He replied, well, yes, unless, of course, we want to continue supplying cheap food and labour to our neighbouring island. The island of Britain, particularly England, still looms large, but thanks to joining the EU as it now is, we no longer need to be content solely supplying her with cheap services. The sense of nationality which gave us the courage to join the EU and the state with which to do it owes itself in no small part to the GAA. Interesting. The proximity of our islands means we are destined to be entangled in Anglo-Irish knots. Brexit being the most suffocating, we now have Arlene Foster's use of coded, threatening language, warning red lines of unionist objection are not merely red but blood red. So this article is from 2 or 3 years ago, as I'm sure you figured out. However, The combination of independence, education, and a sense of race and place, enhanced so strongly by the GAA, gives us every hope that we will survive these complexities. No observer looking at Ireland in 1984, when Michael Cusack and a handful of Fenians, with one exception, a rugby playing inspector in the RIC, founded the GAA in Hayes Hotel in Thurles, could have foreseen such a promise. The Irish landscape, psychologically and physically, could easily have been framed out of Goldsmith's lines, "I'll fair's the land where wealth accumulates and men decay." Archbishop Croke, who had the park named after him, obviously, readily agreed to become the patron of Cusack's new association because of his despair at the sight of young men hanging around with no work and little prospect of any. He rightly saw the GAA as a means of injecting energy and purpose into the youth, and of inculcating a sense of Irishness, where an education system based on teaching children that they were English had done much to erode. Now, what do you think of that? I'm not done. There's more. So I'm just going to finish. I'm going to read that again. He rightly saw the GAA as a means of injecting energy and purpose into the youth and inculcating a sense of Irishness, which an education system based on teaching English, on teaching children that they were English, had done much to erode. Pádraig Pearse would later say the foundation of the Gaelic League was what recreated the Irish nation. In fact, the GAA preceded the Gaelic League by 4 years and played both a part in transforming the psychological and political landscapes to a degree that is hard to grasp today. Suffice to say, the Cusack's claim that the GAA spread like a prairie fire was accurate. Initially, it began as an athletic association, with hurling and football coming along afterwards. From its inception, the association intermingled with the physical force tradition, so the purely sports-minded members such as Cusack continually struggled with the Fenians for control of the association. In its early days, and indeed to the coming of the so-called free education of the 1960s, another struggle occupied the association, that of the power of the clergy, on which the GAA was initially dependent for secretarial and organisational talent. The bishop throwing in the ball at the start of the All-Ireland was an apt symbol for the other colonialism vying for the Kathleen the Houlihan's soul against Mother England, Mother Church. This is a brilliant article. I love reading articles where I have to go back and read them again, read paragraph again. I'm going to read that paragraph again. The GAA was initially dependent for secretarial and organisational talent. The bishop throwing in the ball at the start of the All-Ireland was an apt symbol for the other colonialism vying for Kathleen Houlihan's soul against Mother England, Mother Church. Brilliant. Well fucking written. The castle authorities and their agents at Dublin Castle, the RIC, correctly perceived the GAA from the start as a threat. Bloody Sunday was no coincidence. When the Brits attacked a GAA game between Dublin and Tipperary in Croke Park, killing 11, including one of the players, and injuring 60 civilians, they knew they were striking at the heart of Irish life. The War of Independence, whose centenary is occurring... The War of Independence, whose centenary is occurring, owed a great deal to the GAA, whose young men marched on public occasions with Tipperary rifles, hurleys, on their shoulders. The GAA produced miracles of tightrope walking between Fenians and football. After the 1916 rising, Croke Park was used for a crucial meeting of the Underground Dáil. This meeting brought the volunteers under its control, but the association could always validly point to its constitution that it was not political and it was non-sectarian in outlook. In Kerry, when the Civil War was at its grimmest, this ruling held fast, allowing Free Staters and Republicans to compete and then melt into the crowds after the final whistle of the game. After the war, the GAA played a major part in helping bring opposing sides together. Civic Guards played alongside active IRA men, and attendance at matches gave both wounded parties a chance to participate or to watch sports while allowing wounds to heal. Unfortunately, the seepage of historical poison made the GAA a target for sectarian assassins when the Troubles broke out, and the H-Block controversy almost tore the association asunder in the north. Somehow the vision of Cusack and Crook persisted. The association remained united, but the tensions and shadows of the past still hover. The Kingspan Rugby Stadium and the Windsor Park soccer mecca thrive after rejuvenation. At the same time, a proposal to revivify Casement Park was launched. Alas, Casement Park lies derelict, weeds, not footballs, cover its surface. Well, at the time of writing, but that's been sorted out, hopefully. Well, it has, and it's been announced it's going ahead, so hopefully Casement Park will be open soon. Such are the twists of history which still influence Ireland in the anniversary year after the War of Independence, which arguably make GAA the most valuable organisation in the state. Well, I think by the demonstration of their leadership during COVID, I would say that that's unquestionable. And bravo, great article. Well done to the author. That's fantastic. Brilliant. So, there's another article here. About. I'm not going. Again, I've been reading all fucking night. I've been going for. The brilliant article. Called. It's about Croke and Cusack. What the country needed was an Irish organisation to bring order and unity to sport on a nationwide basis. And fuck by God, I think they'd be delighted if they saw what it turned into. I know that they saw in their lifetimes that it, as I said, spread like wildfire. But here from the article, the GAA drew up its first set of rules in 1885. Essential objectives of the association were to bring about the organisation of Irish sport by Irish men, to draft new rules for Irish games, and 3, to devise schemes of recreation for Irish people. Yeah. The Irish people began to recognise and take pride in Irish culture. Celtic Dawn was an accurate description of the changes at many levels. And then, but you can't not be aware of the fact that there was the Celtic revival was all around this time as well. People started to talk about the Irish language, saving the Irish language, because it was clearly on its way out. It was almost dead. Things like that, and then W.B. Yeats and poets and artists and all the rest of it. So I'm not going to read that because, again, I'll be here all night. And I've a massive article here too about the links between the loyalists, and this is written by Laura Friel, and it's written in on Foblocked, but I'm going to read a little bit of it anyway. West Belfast residents, let me just see when this is from. June 29, 2000. So this is an old one. This is 20 years ago. West Belfast residents have called for an Orange Order march scheduled for the 12th to be rerouted away from nationalist homes after loyalist paramilitaries dressed in military-style clothing and carrying UDA and UFF flags were filmed accompanying Orange men during a controversial march on the Springfield Road. Orange men appeared to experience no difficulty in marching alongside members of an organisation which only a few days earlier was threatening to kill Catholics. Amateur video footage captured a number of sinister figures, their identities obscured with woolen hats, dark glasses, etc. So I'm not going to read that because if you're from here, you know, I know, and there's no, pardon me, there's no point in me reading out an article about what you know. Everybody fucking knows. So I just opened a drink there. It's not beer, don't worry. A little thing of Lucozade. So the GAA and the Orange Order are not the same. If the GAA excluded you on the basis of your religion, I wouldn't be having this conversation with you. I wouldn't be having this talk with you. No one would. If the GAA was anyway exclusionary, we wouldn't be having this conversation. It used to exclude members of the security services, security forces, but I would say that was for a good reason. At that time, I would have had no problem with that at all. Those days are gone, so the rule get changed. Nothing wrong with that. I am opposed to the Orange Order because of the rules of exclusion. I don't want to be in the Orange Order, but I don't see why an order like that should get public funding. And then whenever they compare it to something as wonderful as the GAA, it grinds my gears. It grinds my fucking gears. Let's just say that. So, I wonder, will I do... Let me just check the time here. I've been going for an hour and a half. I don't think I've time to do... you know what? I might do the Paul Mason one tomorrow and just put it on its own. Yeah. So, okay, we're going to call this. That's more than enough for a podcast. Who the hell's going to listen to an hour and a half of that? Quite a few of you, as it turns out. Paul Mason's covert intelligence-linked plot to destroy the grey zone. So I don't know if you know who Paul Mason is, but he's a prominent leftist in England, and I think he has just outed himself as a deep state plant. I suspect he has always been a deep state plant. A part of the problem that we have on the left is that our organisational attempts tend to be infiltrated and then undermined. And I think this is an example of that. But the problem is with Mason is that he's been caught. I thought Mason was sound, but he's been going increasingly off the fucking off the reservation recently. But this is nuts. He's been caught flat out. His emails got leaked, and he's been you know what? I'll do it separately because it's too long. There's too much. I don't want to just do a quick 2-minute on it. I think it deserves a good segment all by itself. So maybe I'll do it tomorrow. Yeah, we'll schedule that for tomorrow. We'll do that. We'll do a live stream tomorrow, and then we'll just throw them all up as podcasts, or maybe just keep the Paul Mason one just on YouTube on its own as a quick half-hour segment. Yeah, well, maybe we'll do that. So there we go. That's the podcast. That's the live stream. We're done. So thanks to the guys for joining me. Thomas Clark, thank you, brother. Appreciate it. Sean S. McCann 36 on the YouTube says, well, Protestants are free to play for GAA clubs and Catholics cannot join the Orange. Absolutely. Thanks, Demo. Great chat. Appreciate it, brother. That's the point, Sean. S. McCann, I'm assuming. Sorry, I said Sean because I know a few Sean McCanns. 100%, mate. That's exactly the fucking issue, isn't it, really? So, yeah. It's bullshit. It's to compare the two is a fucking offensive in the extreme. So there we go. I'm all done. Like, share, subscribe if you can. Head over to the Patreon, lend me your support. There's only one tier, £3 a month, and you get access to everything and early access. And whenever I can get some special stuff, I will give it to the Patreons as and when I can. And yeah, so thanks everybody. Enjoy your Saturday night, and we'll catch you on the flip side. Tune in tomorrow. We'll do the Paul Mason one. Okay, let's do it.